All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Rise and Grind Morning Show. It is Monday morning, March 3rd, 2025, kicking it off at 8:17 a.m. Sorry about the delay, but there's just too much going on to get kicked off early this morning. So I appreciate you guys and your patience. We're going to get rolling right away. We've got tons of topics that we're probably not going to get to today, but we're going to try to have a good conversation here about free agency. Let's get Eric in here. Morning, Eric. How are you, buddy?
I am fantastic this morning.
Oh, it's double fantastic, man. What does that mean?
Well, I hit some really cool personal milestones this weekend on social media. So on my personal Facebook page, I hit 30,000 followers this weekend. And on my YOOPERLITES page, I hit 50,000 followers on my page. So that's 80,000 between my two pages. So I'm pretty happy about that. Had a very good weekend on the old website.
Yeah, congratulations, dude. That's great news.
Yeah.
It's great news. Great news.
Yeah, and then I had two reels hit 1.2 and 1.3 million views, and another one that's just about to hit 1 million from this weekend. So
what were they?
One was a YOOPERLITE sphere being made. Another one was a gentleman finding a YOOPERLITE on the beach. And what was the other one? And the other one that's just about to hit 1 million is another person finding a YOOPERLITE on a beach.
Nice. Yeah, the sphere cutting, man. That's pretty cool stuff. I told you my idea for those YOOPERLITEs, man. We got to get a lion engraved in those things.
Yeah,
that would be sweet.
I saw this really cool reel the other day of someone laser engraving rock, but they laser engraved kind of like 3D printed into the rock, and it made it look like a statue was coming out of the rock. So I have to figure out how to do that because I have the exact laser engraver that was in the video. I just don't know how to do any of the stuff they were doing. So it's pretty cool.
Beyond my expertise, so you're not going to gain any help from me.
Me too.
So, all right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Look, we had a wild week here. You know, it's Combine week last week. We learned a lot about a lot of people, a lot of players, a lot of personalities. I think that when you finally put, pen to paper on some of these guys, a lot of views changed. And that's good, right? That's good because I think that now a lot of people are starting to realize what I said a month ago, and that's how deep this draft really is. But not just in general, specifically for your Detroit Lions. I believe that this draft is shaping up to be one of the better drafts in recent seasons. I mean, it's hard to compete with 2023. It'll always be hard to compete with 2020. That by far is the best draft Brad has ever put together. But this season, I think that when we look at the scope of this roster, the free agents that are impending to either sign or leave, and what's on deck for this season, the players we're getting back from injury, I think that we're looking at a situation now where maybe 3 players is all we're really expected to get in this draft to make a difference. So, Eric, I don't know if you've had a chance to really go over everything yet, but, when we take a look at free agency as a whole, obviously the Lions are going to fill some holes. It's like spring season in Michigan, right? We have kind of like 2 seasons. We have pothole season, and then we have paving season. It seems like that's it between, spring and fall. And kind of the same thing for Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions here in the spring. It's pothole season. It's time to fill those gaps and kind of cover up and get ready for, what is going to be spring OTAs, the draft, shaping up your roster for the first summer practices. And so I don't know how many holes Brad is really going to cover. Right now, when I just looked a few moments ago, we have 52 guys signed. So we still have 28 to go. And a laundry list of free agents that have yet to make a decision or have yet to been offered by the Detroit Lions. So what's your quick and dirty on, I guess, the combine as a whole, where you thought it was at the beginning? Where do you think it is now for Lions specifically? And pothole filling, man. Free agency here in just a week away.
Yeah, well, it was a lot to watch. I watched most of it. of the combine. I have not watched the tight ends or the offensive linemen yet. Have it all recorded on my DVR, so I'll get to it here eventually. But what changed my mind? I don't know if anything changed my mind, but now I've been introduced to a lot of these players that I didn't know before the combine. And that's what I like the combine for, is to introduce me to all these players. And to me, they all have a clean slate before the combine, because I don't know what they've done in college and what they haven't done in college. I haven't watched any tape on any of them. I only watched, I think, one college game all of last year, and that was the Michigan Ohio State game. I think that was the only game I watched all year. And
as a Buckeye fan, right?
No. But I'm just not the biggest college fan per se. I like the pro ball, and I like the way it's ran. And yeah, I don't know. I went into it with a clean slate again this year, just like I did last year. I didn't have any preconceived notions on player A, B, C, or D. But each day that I watched, there was at least two players from each group that stood out to me that I was like, yeah, I could see that guy playing for the Detroit Lions. And then, hearing about some of these guys' interviews and how they went and the things that they said, that reaffirmed some of them even more. And then finding out things about them from when they played in school, and then finding out how their production was on the field, that makes me feel even better. So now I'm kind of getting a roundabout view of players I wouldn't mind seeing play for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, it's definitely an eye opener when you get an opportunity to really take a look at some of these guys, and we're gonna take a quick look at the free agency list today. We're gonna talk about it, but we're gonna start right away with some NFL news to get us rolling. And you got your list, right?
Yep.
Good deal. So I want to start with Jalen Milroe for just a moment, because this is a guy that all of you saw me put as my number one quarterback in my first mock draft. Now, mock 3.0 will be tonight. I'll be doing it live. I'll have it done before we go live, but I put him as number one just because it wasn't for anything, other than I felt that Jalen Milroe belongs in the first round. And I believe that at some point, this guy may be one of the best quarterbacks coming out of this class. A lot of people have said different. But they said the same thing about Jaden Daniels last year too. Now he was more of a consensus top 3, top 4 in the draft last season. But Jalen Milroe has been kind of given that, treatment that he doesn't belong anywhere near the first round. And I think that's a mistake. After watching him and watching that ball just pop out of his hand, he's got special talent. Special talent. They said he's not accurate. I saw some accuracy issues at times, but I'm going to go ahead and chalk that up to, these are different receivers you haven't thrown to. There's no chemistry. The same thing we could say about Jared Goff. You can't just go throw a new, pro wideout on the roster and expect it to click. It doesn't work that way. Now, what I saw was a guy that can throw the ball as far as just about anybody I've seen in the last decade. And the speed on that ball and the way that it came off his hands, a lot of pop, man. A lot of pop. So special athlete, obviously has room to improve. I think that, his performance at the combine, it raised questions about viability as a starting quarterback to some degree for some analysts, but wholly everyone is divided on where he really belongs. I think that this is a player that someone's going to want to trade at 28, and they're going to want to get into the first round and have that 5th year of control. I know I've said it like 10 times now, but I am sold on this. And whether it's the Lions or whether it's the Eagles or the Chiefs, someone is going to want to trade up to probably take him. And if it's not him, yeah, it could be an Ewers. It could be a Jackson Dart. It could be another quarterback that somebody's looking at taking, especially when you see, teams like the Browns or the Titans Maybe they totally pass on a quarterback in the beginning. Maybe they take the Travis Hunters and the Abdul Carters and they circle back at the end of the first round and move up from 33 or 34 to 28 or 29 or whatever. Hopefully Brad Holmes has been on the phone and saying, look, pass on those dudes. Come back, pick them up at the end of the first round. We'll be here for you. That's what I'm hoping happens. Key points about Jalen Milroe, though. Athletic potential, clearly has the gift. His physical abilities, particularly his running ability, they've drawn comparisons to Anthony Richardson, who was the 4th overall pick in 2023. Now, Anthony obviously has had some issues staying healthy, but when you look at Jalen Milroe, I mean, he looks like a bodybuilder in a quarterback's outfit. The dude is he's just built different, literally. Little inconsistency issues. Now, throughout his time at Bama, Milroe exhibited moments of brilliance, right? He also had some periods of inconsistency. What quarterback hasn't? It has raised some doubts about his readiness for the NFL, but I would say that he's probably more ready than any other quarterback, more ready than Hendon Hooker was, coming out of that Tennessee offense. Coaching fit, I think he can fit just about anywhere. But if you're looking at a team that is wanting to stack behind, heck, even the Chiefs, I would say that, Patrick Mahomes is obviously the quarterback forever, but why not have another guy that has that ability, to stack by Jalen Hurts? He reminds me a lot of a Jalen Hurts. Jalen wasn't as big coming out of college, but I see the same similarity of Jalen Hurts where they said he couldn't throw, he was inaccurate, wasn't a good passer of the football, and all he was a running quarterback. Same style of comparison here. Over his career at Bama, he was 6,016 yards, 45 TDs, a completion rate of 64.3%, and then threw up 726 rushing yards and 20 TDs on the ground. Pretty incredible. Pretty incredible season for him. I don't know that you spent a lot of time, obviously, looking at Jalen Milroe, but I will say this. He's a special athlete. I am expecting that there's going to be some trade action for him at the end of the first round. I cannot imagine him slipping out of round 2, but we'll see what happens. Landon Jackson is another one that I wanted to highlight this morning. He's obviously a standout everywhere he's been, primarily because everyone recognizes that smooth, beautiful head of his that, all bald men around the world would love to have. But unfortunately, he's assumed this beautiful noggin of his because of alopecia. And listening to, a lot of the comments surrounding Landon Jackson and what he has done, ever since it was a young age, he's bullied in school and having to battle through that. And now he's, can look back as a hero to some people, is what's being said, to little kids across East Texas. Now he's a Texarkana Pleasant Grove, or he's from Texarkana Pleasant Grove in Texas. He's one of the best football players, obviously, in the country. He was an LSU commit before anything else, but his awareness and promotion of alopecia, hoping one day to start, a foundation for all of this, which I'm sure he will. He's kind of given back to, other football players that have done the same for him, like Ryan Shazier and Charlie Villanueva. Now, there are a few players in Texas high school football that stand out as much as Landon Jackson, but not many. Guy's 6'6", 257 pounds. He's imposing. Obviously, he's intimidating. And, man, did he run well. He tested well. He did everything well at the combine. Again, sitting next to a family and speaking with them, they had nothing but high praise for Landon and what he was able to do on the football field. And so when you hear that from other families and other families, of football, soon to be NFL athletes, soon to be NFL players, that holds a special weight for me, that if that's what they think about him, imagine what I would think about him. So he's been one of the most recognizable, obviously, because of what he's endured throughout his life and growing up with alopecia obviously is not easy. There's a few quotes here, though, that I want to read. He said he was 4 or 5, and all of my hair just started combing away. Obviously, his parents took him to a doctor, and they obviously diagnosed him with alopecia. And then he said, quote, "It was tough growing up because I was different than everyone," end quote. And then he went on to say that it was pretty awkward, or he was pretty awkwardly built. And then he said, I've always been tall, but I was skinny, like skin and bones. I didn't have any meat on me at all. So can you imagine? I mean, this guy's skin and bones. He's, obviously going through a tough time, as a child with this disease. I don't know if you call it a disease. We'll call it a condition. And it had to be tough, right? Going to the point of where he finally was able to embrace it, and he didn't care what other people said. All of his friends starting to get used to it, and then they weren't saying anything about it anymore. But up until that point, he had to deal with some bullying, and that's got to be tough, at a young age. Anybody out there that's been through that knows how tough it can be. As a 7th grader at Gilmore, he started feeling, that he was pretty good at football, and that's where he turned all of his attention to, deflecting from everything else happening in his life at that time to football. And here he is now, if you want to use the G word, a generational talent coming out of Texas into the NFL. It has to feel good, man. And I'm sure he's not an individual that wants to throw shade at anybody from the past, but I can only imagine those dark moments when you're sitting alone and you're thinking, I wish those kids could see me now. And they probably do. Those bullies that maybe never amounted to anything in their life. And this kid's about to enter the NFL and be one of the highest paid defensive ends right out the gate as a rookie. Because if he slips out of the first round, I'd be surprised. He's probably going to get a $12 million payday from day one. So he's freakishly special from so many different perspectives. Not only on the field, off the field, he's going to be doing a lot of things. So with those two players, Eric, I'll kick it over to you for your thoughts here. I don't know, again, if you don't have anything on Jalen, I understand. But Landon, man, I really want to see this guy in Detroit. I think that his athletic ability is exactly what we're looking for.
Well, on Milroe, let's see here. I was looking at my notes for the next section here. Milroe's hands were smaller than 9 inches at the Senior Bowl, but measured in more than a half inch bigger at the NFL Combine.
How does that happen?
I don't know.
Did somebody intentionally write the wrong number down? Because it's not.
I don't know.
It's not like he stretched his hand.
Yeah, I don't know. He grew. Growth spurt in a month.
It sounds like to me, it sounds like someone fudging the numbers so that they push him down the list.
Yeah.
But anyway, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So he's one of my winners in the thing coming up, just because he's got bigger hands than they said. So maybe that won't hurt his draft stock so much. And then Landon Jackson, man, that guy was just a specimen. Super tall. He had great leaping ability up and forward. He had quite the broad jump, quite the jump where they jump up high. And he ran a good 40. He looked really fluid doing the 4-bag drill and a lot of the other things they were asking the edges to do. Looked really good. Looked like a fit. And the way this kid has had to overcome having alopecia and getting picked on in school and stuff, for sure this kid is going to have a great head on his shoulders. He's going to be a Dane Campbell grit kind of guy, having persevered and went through some of his own personal trials and tribulations. Looking forward to seeing if this guy ends up being a Detroit Lion.
Yeah, I am too. I'm definitely interested to watch his career unfold, no matter where it is. There was a statement here. Nick P said, I'm not about guys jumping because of athleticism. I think what he's saying there is jumping up the board. There's a reason why some of these players were very productive or not productive against elite competition. Some variables besides speed and strength. I would wholeheartedly agree with that, Nick. I think that there's a lot of value in measurables and the agility scores. But there's also reasons, right? And I think that when you dedicate yourself to a little bit of tape, you can identify those things. Matter of fact, I think if we were to talk about like Shamar Stewart for a moment, he didn't blaze the trails. Hold on here. Let me just pull it up. Let me pull him up. All right, so he didn't really blaze the trails with sacks, right? You're talking a sack and a half every year for 3 years in a row. As a defensive end, you're probably wondering what in the world, right? Like what? Why? What's going on here? But then you also have, Nick Scorton on that same defense. We can see how today's going to go, Eric. We're just going to get off and rolling.
That's all right.
In the wrong direction. You got a guy like Nick Scorton that went, 2 sacks, 10 sacks, 5 sacks. And your other guy on the field, Shamar Stewart's 1.5. So it wasn't just about sacks. And I think that when you look at each style of defense and what they're asked to do schematically versus what you want them to do or what we think that they should be doing, 2 totally different things. So I couldn't agree more that, analytics, in the measurements or the, agility scores in that, they're part of the process, right? They paint a big part of the picture, but it's the eye test, right? It's everything that you can see on tape that would tell you, okay, they probably would have been more successful had they done this, or, oh, I can see on this play, they weren't blitzing the quarterback, they were containing. And if you're containing, obviously you're not trying to get after the quarterback, you're just trying to maintain your position, and maybe they're blitzing their linebackers as opposed to their edge, or maybe they're blitzing safeties and corners and getting after the quarterback that versus the edge. So I look at everything. I look at the bigger picture, but I would wholeheartedly agree that we need more than just the jumping out the gym scores, right? We need to see how it translates. The one thing that I would add to that would be I'd much rather have a guy that tested very well than a guy that didn't, to a degree. Right? Obviously, they have to have it from the shoulder up. If they don't have it from the shoulder up, I don't care where they tested. Case in point, Brian Branch. We've spoken about it before. He ran a 4.58. He was dropping dropping off the board big time. Teams passing him up. Brad reaches up and grabs him. Branch was taken way too late in the draft. We know that. We got lucky. But he has it from the neck up. And he plays way faster. So next gen stats, looking at the GPS scores, that's where you're going to find more information. It's not all of this. So when I do all my mocks, I'm looking at all the other stuff behind the scenes that requires subscriptions and everything else that not everybody's looking at. So Eric, you had some winners and losers from each position this last weekend.
Sure. So speaking of these quarterbacks, why don't we start with some quarterbacks? So one of the winners from this weekend was Jackson Dart at over 6'2" and 223 pounds with the second largest hands of the group. The weigh-in was a clear win for the Ole Miss passer. And if I remember correctly, I don't think he missed a pass the whole weekend. I think he was the one that hit every single pass. And then your losers, since we already talked about Jalen Milroe being a winner, our losers are Cam Ward and Will Howard. While not stock destroying by any stretch of the imagination, having only 9-inch hands isn't ideal for those quarterbacks. And I'm pretty sure that Will Howard missed pretty much every throw that he tried to throw this weekend, and he tested very poorly.
Was that the total list? All of the winners and losers for you?
No, that was just for the quarterbacks.
Okay.
Then if you scroll down a little bit, there's winners and losers for each position. So next up is the running backs. Winner is Omarion Hampton. Several top running back prospects came nowhere close to the desired 220-pound threshold for a featured running back. So Hampton checking that box was a feather in his cap. And then a loser was Jaden Blue. The Texas product is very slight at 5'9", 196 pounds, and his hand and arm length were among the lowest as well. He is known for his speed and is more of a complementary piece, but that limits where he could be drafted. And even his speed wasn't anywhere near what we thought it would be. Blue said he was going to break Xavier Howard's 40-yard dash record of 4.21 seconds. He proceeded to run a 4.38.
So here's what I'm going to add on Will Howard first.
Sure.
Watching some of his throws right now, And I would say that you've got two things going on here. Grossly miscalculating these throws. One, he's not going to get a lot of credit because of the Ohio State alum. Two, and that's just the way it is. It seems like every quarterback from Ohio State just gets trashed by everybody. Will Howard obviously did not have a good day. He's going to have a bigger pro day, a better pro day. But he definitely was exposed to a degree that he wasn't prepared. And he should have hung it up. He shouldn't even have thrown. But there's something deeper going on here, and I don't know what exactly it is, but he got booed.
Well,
he got booed there, and that's not good.
There was a large contingent of Michigan fans.
Oh yeah.
Let's just say that.
Yeah. So I would say that he's gonna have to step it up at his pro day. But hey, this is part of the process. Remember when I said last week, Eric, that some of these players, they go in and they ruin their stock?
Yep.
This is what happens. Now he can bounce back, but he's not somebody that's even on my radar for the Lions. God, if Brad were to take this kid, I'd be extremely disappointed. And it's not just because of this. We've got to go watch the tape too. But at the end of the day, you're working with a bunch of guys you never worked before. Some of this stuff is bound to happen. Now, at his pro day, if he goes in and knocks it out the park, I think that is the bigger storyline here. That these are the guys that he's been working with, the guys that he's trusted. But still, you would think that you could go in and just play with just about everybody. I mean, you've got this skill for a reason. You should have a little bit better touch on the football. He just didn't look good.
Yep. So now we're going to go to wide receiver, and I have my own winner here. So my winner is Iowa State's Jaden Higgins. Mm-hmm. He's 6'4", 214. So he's the same size as T. Higgins. He ran a faster 40 than A.J. Brown at 4.47. And his broad jump and his vert were comparable to Brandon Ayuk. And to me, he just kind of stood out. I like him. He's a taller, bigger, wider, wide receiver. He's that kid we need on the outside to go get the deep, not the deep ball, but like the deep corner and the big contested catches. So for me, that was the perfect, if I could line one up, that was my biggest winner of the weekend. And then biggest loser is Tez Johnson. The Oregon standout is the lightest wide receiver at 154 pounds at the NFL Scouting Combine since Brandon Banks in 2010. Dating back to 1989, there have only been 7 wide receivers lighter. There is a place for these players, think Tank Dell and Pop Douglas, but it would be tough for some teams to get over. What do you think about the wide receivers? Did you have a winner or a loser?
I mean, I spoke about a few last night. There was a few guys that really helped themselves. Jalen Knoll was one from Iowa State. Now, he came in at 5'10 and a quarter, so it's not really somebody that I think the Lions are looking for. But then again, can we get rid of TK85 at some point? Yeah, we could. And bringing in a guy like Jalen Knoll would be a good step up from that direction. TK85 has been on this roster forever. I think he's got more transactional history than anybody in the NFL on one team, let alone. So, at some point, I think that you do want to filter out the bottom feeders on your roster, and I think that he would be a good transition off TK85. Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State, 6'4" and 8. Yes, he hits it all. The measurements, the weight, the speed. I think that he did well. Matthew Golden clearly was the biggest winner of the weekend, but he's only 5'11", and that, I mean, it's not that he's not going to have production in the NFL. He will, but is he just going to be the next, slot merchant? Possibly.
One thing I like about the Iowa State kid, and this is totally unrelated.
Which one?
Higgins, is that Rule, the coach we just got from Iowa State.
Yeah.
He's going to be our offensive assistant.
I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
So he's got a little bit of history with this kid. He's going to know him. He's going to know everything about him.
Yeah, and that's the, a couple weeks ago we spoke about it in the morning show that when Roll was added, then when I went back and looked at the four guys primarily coming out of Iowa State, I said I guarantee you. I'm sure you remember this. I said I guarantee you, the Lions are going to interview the linebacker and one of the wide receivers, and they have, and I think that that's because of the fact that Roll brings in history, with these guys. Number one, and they had a lot of great things to say about Roll. I went through that last night as well. There's some highlights, some quotables, if you will, and all great things to say. So my biggest winner, and I went and watched some of his tape last night after I got off. Alec Iomanor or Iomanor, or however you say his last name. I went and watched the play against Travis Hunter, and this was I think the game sealing touchdown. Had to be, I don't know, 40-yard bomb. He's down the left sideline. Hunter's draped all over him. He turns around. He catches the ball over top of Hunter and then backs himself into the end zone for a touchdown. And just a phenomenal play. But if you're doing this type of stuff against Travis Hunter, who's been regarded as not only the best corner in the combine, also one of the best wide receivers at the combine and soon to be draft, but best athlete in college in 2024. And if Alec is able to do these things against this guy, I think that makes him even more pro ready, that he's gone up against elite competition. And it just so happens that we have a coach from Stanford, right, that probably has some good connections with these guys. So at 6'2", 206 pounds, 32 3/8 inch arms, 10-inch hands, he's not the 6'4", 6'3" guy that I'm looking for, but he plays bigger than what he is. Tested great, 4.44, 1.58 split, 38.5 inch vert, 10.7 broad. I mean, that's jumping, man. He's definitely has the burst, which is what you're looking for off the line. I think he's the biggest winner of the whole weekend when it comes to wide receivers. That's just my 2 cents. But now that I've went and learned a little bit more, I mean, he's out of Alberta, called Medicine Hat, Alberta. Whoever would have thought an NFL player would have come out of a place called Medicine Hat, Alberta? Pretty cool story. Pretty cool story.
Way up there too.
I have no idea where it is. No clue. Don't plan on visiting anytime soon.
So tight ends are next. So the biggest winner of the weekend was Elijah Arroyo. The Miami product physically looked the part at 6'5" and 250 pounds and checked the boxes in terms of length, 33-inch arms, and a nearly 82-inch wingspan. Arroyo elected not to work out, so it was important to win the weigh-in. Okay. And then loser was Tyler Warren, the Penn State star, has good size at 6'5", 256 pounds, but his hand size was relatively small and his wingspan was only 76.5 inches, which was the shortest of the group. So they're just going off of measurables there, not so much on what they did on the field for the tight ends.
So there's a misconception with wingspan. Now, I've never heard of anyone else talk about the ape index but me, ever. I don't know why. It's something that I dug up this year when I was researching, body types and sizes, and it seems like it's more used in the NBA or basketball than it is in the NFL. But I've never heard anyone talk about it. So I think the misconception is when you look at the number of the wingspan, call it whatever you just said, 76.5 inches. Okay, how tall is he? Because if he's 5'11", well, that's a great wingspan. But if he's, at 75.5 inch wing, if he's 75 inches tall, that's a terrible wingspan. So I think that's the misconception. When you look at a wingspan, you need to look at the height and then divide the two. And if you have at least, 1.03 or higher, that's at least average in the NFL. For me, it's got to be above a 106. just based on the comparables, the measurables, everything that I've put together on my sheet, that's where I see some of the best athletes producing in the NFL is, it's there's no really sliding scale or anything here. I mean, it's pretty definitive that the guys that have a bigger wingspan play better in the NFL. Depending too. Obviously, you don't need running backs with a big wingspan unless they're pass heavy concept. As far as tight ends, look, Elijah Arroyo. Am I surprised? No, I'm not. And that's simply because we watched the Shrine Bowl together with some of the members and others, and we also watched the Reese's Bowl. And Arroyo was one of those guys that we identified as someone to keep our eye on. I loved what he was doing in those games. I think it was the Shrine Bowl that he was the East-West Shrine. I don't think he was the Reese's Bowl. My memory's blank there. But whatever game it was, he was playing pretty well. And I thought that he was going to have a pretty good combine just based on what I saw, and then he'd be able to improve his draft stock. So right now, I'm not even sure where he's ranked. Do you know where he's ranked by chance?
No, I don't have any rankings.
All right. Well, somebody gave me this thing last night called the Huddle Report. I've never seen this thing before. I never knew this existed. So let's take a look at the Huddle Report right now. And it's telling us that on tight ends, Arroyo is the 5th listed. And probably in the second day, round 3 is where this list has him going. Second day, pick 73-ish. So that'd be like a early 3rd, maybe. I could agree with that. And honestly, if the Lions have an extra pick or are able to move up and not sell the farm, I would love to see a guy like Arroyo make this roster, because I do believe the Lions are looking at a tight end this year. It may not be the most important position, but I think that when you look at the likes of Shane Zielstra probably not coming back, or maybe just a camp body, we need another guy. And roster roulette is in effect, right? You've got Sam Laporta due for a contract soon. What are you going to do to backfill? You've already paid Brock Wright. Is he going to become a cap casualty at some point? I haven't looked at his contract in whole as far as when the Lions actually have an out. It could be at this year. It could be next year. But I like Arroyo. I think he's definitely deserves to be the winner of the weekend for tight ends.
All right. We're going to move on to corner next. So our winner for the weekend, Za Frazier. The UTSA cornerback had one of the most unique measurements of all defensive backs in Indianapolis at nearly 6'3" and just 186 pounds, which hints at a fast 40 incoming. Importantly, too, his arm length of nearly 33 inches was the longest of the cornerback group. So there's some long arms for the corners. And then the loser is corner Will Johnson, Michigan's star outside cornerback, who we haven't seen on the field since October, measured in with surprisingly short arms in Indianapolis at just 30 1/8 inches. Being over 6'1" and 194 pounds ticked the height and weight boxes, though. So a Michigan guy that did not test very well.
I'm sorry, which Michigan guy did not test very well?
Will Johnson. He had short arms.
Yeah, that's a problem. He has all the physical ability as far as his game on the field. Are his arms going to be a problem, for teams that are looking at a corner that early in the draft? I think he just dropped to the back end of the first. Maybe could get pushed into the second. I guess it depends on how you feel Travis Hunter is, cornerback or wide receiver, and depending on what team you are. Obviously, Travis is the number one. Azariah Thomas, I was not surprised by the way that he moved this weekend. But Trey Amos, he's a guy that I think is going to climb in a hurry. I think he's going to climb. Bilal Kone out of Western Michigan, he's a big winner for me. The guy looks super smooth. Great hips, great hip work. The mirror match game for him looked pretty well. I'm expecting that the Lions are going to get a local visit with him. I wouldn't understand why they wouldn't, because I think you can have as many locals as possible. This is a guy you want to bring in. To me, I think that he's quietly starting to slide up some boards. And I also think that O'Donnell Fortune or Fortune, however you pronounce his last name, I also think that he's quietly moving up some boards right now. But let me start with Belial Cone. Now, he didn't have a great production score or athleticism score, but he did run a 4.43. He had a 1.54 split, 31.5-inch vert, and 124-inch broad jump, which is perfect. But his arms also came in a little bit short, 30 7/8. So even though he's got all the other intangibles and measurables and agility, the one measurable that seems to be an issue this season for cornerbacks is arm length. Now, at 6'1", 190 pounds and 9-inch hands, I think the rest of it fits. I'll compare him to Will Johnson real quick. Will Johnson came in at 6'2", but 30 and an 1/8 inch arm, so a full half-inch shorter, right? More than a half-inch shorter. And he's an inch taller, and his hands were only an 1/8 inch wider or longer. So I think that tells you something, that when you look at the two corners comparatively, Kone actually measures out a little bit better because his arm length is longer for his height, if that makes sense. Now, I don't have his wingspan put together yet, but all that'll be done this week because I have to go through all 500 prospects and get all their measurables. Fortune or Fortune. Does anybody know how to say the last name? Tell me if you do, because I didn't hear it announced. Now, this guy, his measurables came in solid. So 6'1", 31.5-inch arms, 9.25-inch hands, 185 pounds. He can definitely add a little bit of weight. Doesn't look very skinny on the field, but you could tell that he could use a little bit of weight, maybe in the lower half. 32.5-inch vert, not the greatest. 9.9 broad, wish it was over 10 foot. But he has a place, and I'm not going to discredit some of these guys for their on-field performances or their agility when you watch the tape. This guy had a pick six. I believe it was the Shrine Bowl. He knows where to be. He read the play perfectly. He put himself in a position to win, picked the ball, walked it into the end zone. Those are the kinds of players that I look for, that even though their measurables or intangibles are a little bit, or measurables and agility is a little bit off, we'll just call it the Brian Branch factor, which is he's elite at everything he does, but maybe one thing is a little bit off that is pulling him down the list, on everybody else's charts. But for somebody that really pays attention to what he does on the field and his next gen stats, which I haven't looked at yet, by the way, there might be something there that other people are missing. And I can't imagine the NFL teams are going to miss, any of this information. They've got piles and piles of information. So he's a guy that I think is going to slide up. I have to see what his next gen stats are looking like. The only reason why I'm mentioning a couple of these names is, again, late round guys, like third round guys. If the Lions are really interested in bringing in another corner, I don't think it's early. I really don't. I would be very surprised. I think a safety early would make more sense versus a corner. Biggest winner of the weekend, who did you have?
For corners?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to get back up there. Za Frazier.
Okay. My biggest winner is Trey Amos. I've been talking about him now for a couple of weeks. At least when I watch his tape, I see Terrion Arnold number 2. Plays almost a very similar game, very aggressive, but he's not aggressive at the point of attack to where he's going to draw a bunch of flags. Big hitter, good tackler. His arms 31.25 inch. That's good enough. 9-inch hands, 6'1" in height, 195 in weight. All great scores there. Combine agility scores 4.43. So he's plenty fast enough. 1.6 split, 32.5-inch vert, 126-inch broad. That tells me that he's going to have that short area burst, closing speed. It's there. Watching his tape, the guy is super impressive. Now, I know I compared him over the weekend on Twitter, and I said, he looks a lot like Terrion, and I don't know, someone said something like, oh, you really went out on a limb there by comparing him to his teammate. Well, he hasn't played with Terrion Arnold in more than a couple of seasons. And then he went to Ole Miss, after I believe Terrion left Alabama. So he's impressive. I think that he's going to be one of the better corners out of this draft. And for whatever reason, he is pushed way down. We'll go to this huddle report again. Let's see what they're saying about corners. Trey Amos is the number 7 behind Maxwell Hairston, Siobhan Revel, Benjamin Morrison, Jade Barron, Will Johnson, and Travis Hunter. If I were to reorder this list, it would go Travis Hunter, Jade Barron, and I would probably put Trey Amos ahead of Will Johnson because of the arm thing, then Will Johnson, then Siobhan Revel, then Maxwell Hairston, then Benjamin Morrison in the top 7. That's probably how I would do that. Kobe Bryant, I still have some work to do on him, so this could all change. And then Azariah Thomas, I need more work on him to kind of figure out where he's going to be. So this will all change. Obviously, we're early. We still have many, many, many weeks of work to do here. So what else we got?
So you're going to get a kick out of this last one. So they put the edge and the D tackles together. So I have one winner and one loser here. So the first one, the winner, edge Shamar Stewart. Stewart was 6'5" and 281 pounds at the Senior Bowl. And as intimidating as those figures together are at the edge rusher position, it felt unlikely the Texas A&M product would be able to test his full potential with that much weight on his frame. He came into the combine at a much sleeker 267 pounds. So he lost 14 pounds coming into the combine, and he tested out of this world. He had I think the best broad jump of any of the edge defenders. And then the biggest loser on the weekend, this is going to be a surprise to many, many people. Edge Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. While being 6'4" and 260 pounds is impressive and hints at a 3-down NFL caliber frame, Sawyer's 31 and 5/8 inch arms will be around the 5th percentile at the edge position since 1999. So, like somebody said, he's got the T-Rex arms, and the shorter arms are sure getting nicked by a lot of people now.
Yeah. I've been vocal about it. I did a video on it last night, I think. Did I do that video last night on Jack Sawyer? Look, I've been vocal about arm length for a long time. And, I was negative on Aiden Hutchinson. That was like the only thing that he had that I didn't like was his wingspan is below 1.0. So his wing and his height are reverse or inverse, right? He's taller than his wingspan is. That's not good. And then his arms are short. So that doesn't help. And that's why when you watch Aiden get locked up with tackles, he can't release all the time. I'd prefer that Aiden doesn't get locked up with tackles and just tries to get around them and try to use as long of as an arm as he can get. So everything else that Aiden has, though, is great. So it's like you take the great with, the one bad thing. Is it going to creep up on you? Are you going to figure out some more pass rush moves to make it work for you? And I think he's done a pretty good job. But taking 2 guys that way, no way. Motor is great. I love it. But I still need someone that can crush the can, that can toss tackles around, that can, set an edge and get away from the offensive lineman by using their arms to their advantage, not a disadvantage. Shamar Stewart, I'm not surprised, man, at what this kid did. And again, sitting with the people and talking to some other people while I was there, this guy is just like one switch away. Just a couple more things. He's a little bit raw in certain areas, but he's just one little toggle away from unlocking something very special. And I think that we're going to see that out of Shamar as long as he stays healthy, which I think he has relatively for his career. I think that we're going to see some really, really good times for him here in the near future in the NFL. Same thing for Nick Scorton. Same thing for TJ Sanders. Look, TJ, in my opinion, is one of the better defensive tackles. He's at 6'3", 284 pounds at the Senior Bowl, which obviously, like it says, it led to some concerns about his ability, on the field because he's a little bit light, but he'll add the bulk. There's no reason why he can't add 13 pounds. And I'm sure that he will. His wingspan tells me that it's available. he can add on to that frame. But TJ is he's another Josh Pascal-esque as far as inside outside, could do both. If he stays at 284, you could use him on the edge as more of a can crushing edge, or if you utilize him in a 3-down technique, in a 3-4 defense, he could probably do that as well. But he would be the smaller end. I really think that Shamar was the biggest winner. I think that Nick did well too, and I would love to have either one, or Landon. I mean, any three of those guys. If we get our hands on any one of those three, I think the Lions are good. What are you gonna say?
I want to bring you back a year ago today.
Okay? Yeah.
And we went to the combine together, and we saw a pair of guys come out of a school, and they both got drafted by the Rams. Brandon Fisk and what was the other kid's name? The defensive
Jared
guy.
Verse.
Yeah, Jared Verse. So that's who Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart remind me of. Those are the two guys, man. If you could get them both on your team, look what having those couple of teammates did for the Rams. You could do something similar here.
I've always wondered why NFL teams don't do that. I feel like and I think Brad is doing that to a point. Like if you see he's bringing in Bama guys, right? Mm-hmm. He's trying to bring in some guys that have worked together. And I think that does help with immediate continuity on a team. And I think it's important. I really do. I feel like if you can find some guys, maybe it's not the same class, but maybe each year, if you're bringing a guy up that you've already played with, and that's what I'm going to go to next, is let me jump into a little bit of Lions news and talk about Brian Branch for just a moment. So speaking about this exact same thing. So Brian Branch has publicly expressed his desire for the Detroit Lions to bring in a former Alabama teammate. Now, in the upcoming 2025 NFL draft, the Lions desperately need a couple of positions. My opinion, you may disagree. I think linebacker is the biggest need 2 times. I think that edge is a need because we need to backfill Aiden's soon-to-be expensive contract. I think defensive tackle is an important position, especially in a draft that is pretty deep. You can find some really good talent. And I would go 2 times there too, because Levi and others, we'll talk about free agency in here in just a second, may not be coming back. But Jihad Campbell is on Brian Branch's mind.
Mine too.
Yeah, and he said, bring him home, is what he said. Bring him home on March 1st. Now, Jihad Campbell's 24 stats, 117 combined tackles, 12 TFLs, 5 sacks, 2 pass deflections, and 1 interception. The one thing that I want to see Brad add to this team, this defense this year, is something that we've consistently not seen. What happened to getting your hands up and batting passes down? I see other teams do it. I see great teams do it. For whatever reason, the Lions are not getting their hands up and batting these passes down. So when we're looking for these prospects, I'm hoping that we find some prospects, and add them to this roster that can actually do some, additional work on the defensive line. That, those are the things that go unnoticed. But every time you bat a pass down, man, you're saving a play. And I think that, you add a guy like this that has a knack for getting his hand on the ball. That's a great start. So Brian Branch, he obviously took to social media. He's advocating for Jihad Campbell, which, let's be real here, probably not going to happen because we'd have to move up, way up, at least right now. The consensus is he's a first-round pick, probably going to go before 28. It's going to be between him and Jelon Walker. Oh, who else? Pierce. Look, I'm not sold on Pierce right now. I think Pierce may be one of those guys that did not help himself. And then there's Barrett Carter. I think those are your 4 best linebackers in the draft right now. You got Pierce, Campbell, Barrett Carter, and Jelon Walker. If the Lions can somehow nab one of those guys, great. I think any one of them is going to help us out. James Pierce, I'm not as high on, only because he's a little light, and I don't think that he's a first down run thumper, run stuffer We need someone that can stuff the run. And I would prefer, that I'd rather have better run defense than not. The more you can take away from an offense, the better off your defense is. So Campbell's projected right now as a first-round pick. Obviously had a great combine. Lions roster needs obviously includes linebacker. So what do you think about Brian Branch wanting to bring one of his teammates home?
I love it. And looking at that last article that we were talking about with the winners and losers, the biggest winner of the weekend, they had Jihad Campbell at just under 6'3" and 235 pounds with 32.5-inch arms. There's those nice long arms. Campbell has premier size as a modern day off the ball linebacker, and at under 240 pounds, he should be able to fly in the 40-yard dash and test exceptionally well in the jumps. And he did. He was fun to watch and seemed like he really knew where to be on the field. He's got the production from Alabama. He's a Bama guy, and Brian Branch wants him. So if Brian Branch wants him, that's good enough for me. Bring him home.
All right, so real quick, appreciate you guys joining the Rise and Grind Morning Show. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. We are still trying to get to 10K, which means we're giving out signed mini helmets by Panay Sewell and Chris Spielman for every 100 subscribers that we get. Look, we've got a lot of work to do. We put a lot of work into this show. We'd really appreciate that if you're stopping by and watching, please just hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and then you'll save yourself of having to watch ads all morning long. We just want to get to 75 likes every morning, and we flip the ads off. Thank you for joining the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Let's go Lions. Let's get back into this. So, Jack Campbell's next, and then I want to get into free agency.
Okay.
So, Jack Campbell, obviously, has been a standout since, he's been in the game. But at Iowa, he was one of the best football players to come through that program. He was a standout for Iowa from 2019 to 2022. He left that school highly regarded as one of the best linebackers to ever play. He's also been influencing some of the NFL prospects this year. At the 2025 NFL Combine, Campbell's leadership and his performance continue to really resonate with current players, notably Jamari Harris and Jay Higgins. I really like Jay Higgins. This is another linebacker that I would love to see added to the Lions at some point. Let me get him pulled up here. Talk about him in just a second, too. Where you at, Higgins? There you are. So anyway, he's really influenced some of his former teammates. Like I said, Jamari Harris and Jay Higgins. They cite Campbell as a very pivotal figure in their development, obviously while they were there, but emphasized his leadership qualities and his work ethic. Now, Higgins remarked on Campbell's ability to separate himself from the majority of players and stated, quote, "Ever since I came into Iowa, Campbell was always in that elite group," end quote. This highlights the importance for me as, the elite performance and motivational tools that Campbell uses and for his teammates and now what he's able to do in the NFL. He was recognized at the Combine in Indianapolis by several prospects who said that Campbell's influence and his legacy that he left behind is nothing short of a tradition of excellence at Iowa, but Jack Campbell really rose above the rest and really helped out some of these guys also to get ready for what they're about to face. Another quote here by Higgins, he said, "I learned a lot from Jack Campbell," end quote. And he also illustrated what a profound impact that Campbell's presence had on his peers. I'm not surprised by this, Eric. I think that Jack Campbell clearly has been a leader from day one. It's the exact type of player that Brad Holmes obviously brought into the squad because he fit, everything from athletic ability, agility, leadership. I mean, everything was box checked. His RAS score, I think, was a 999. Not that the RAS score means a ton, but it helps with certain things, right? It helps to identify certain things. It's no more or less than a sheet that I'm doing, my own RAS score, if you will. But the ongoing recognition of Campbell's leadership, I think it really underscores the critical role of mentorship in sports and also developing, kind of a tree, if you will. As a former player of a college, you're reaching back and trying to help these guys get to the next level, and that's what Jack is doing. He's providing a pathway, a conduit for these players to reach out and say, hey, like, what do I need to do? And Jack has been willing to help these guys out. So Jay Higgins, we'll talk about him in just a second. But what did you think about, we hear these things from Higgins and Jamari Harris, putting Jack Campbell in such a high light here?
Yeah, just go back to the combine interview that the Lions taped of Jack Campbell. You could tell right away how stand-up of a kid this guy was and what kind of a head he has on his shoulders. So not only does he have all the physical attributes with such a high RAS score and measurables, he's also got the brain to go with it. So linebacker, especially where Jack Campbell is playing, I'm thinking it typically takes more than just 1 or 2 years to get going. So I think you're going to see I think we saw a great leap from year 1 to year 2. And I think you're going to see an even larger leap from year 2 to year 3. And the fact that he is still rubbing off on these players that he hasn't played with in a couple of years is amazing. And that he made that much of a difference while he was there at Iowa. Iowa just produces some great linebackers, don't they?
They produce some really good football players overall. So Jay Higgins, I'm going to compare him to the Malcolm Rodriguez crowd, if you will. I think that Jay's probably a fourth, maybe a fifth round pick. As high as a fourth, probably an early fifth right now. But when you look at Malcolm, compare him to Jay, here's what I see. Let me get these things side by side here. And the reason why I'm comparing them is simply based on measurables and how I think that they could fit. So Jay is 6 foot, Malcolm 5'11". Jay is 224, Malcolm was 232. Jay's arms are 31 inches, Malcolm's was 30 and an eighth. And Jay's hands are 9.5, whereas Malcolm's was 9 and 5/8. So when you compare the two, very similar. Right? Very, very similar. Jay's a little taller, a little bit longer arm, a little bit smaller hand, and 10 pounds lighter or 7 pounds lighter as far as weight. That doesn't scare me at all. When a guy like Malcolm can perform the way that he has, there's no reason why a guy like Jay can't. My only problem is this wouldn't be a pick that I would normally go after simply because when you look at a linebacker and you look at what the Lions had faced this last season, we didn't have enough high quality linebackers that can play on the outside. And I think that is probably the most important piece to this team right now is these outside linebackers being able to play in space, being able to match up on these running backs and these tight ends where we got slayed at times, especially against the Bills. That was all because of linebacker play. And that's what needs to get fixed this year. But when I also look at a guy that could be a special teams ace, we just lost, we're going to be losing Germ. So you're looking for somebody to come in and possibly take that role. Well, the only bad part is the guy doesn't run the fastest. He ran a 4.82. His offensive lineman almost running that fast. Malcolm ran a 4.52. And yes, 0.3 of a second is way faster. In my opinion. May not look that much on the field, but it is. His 10-yard split was a 1.64 versus Malcolm at a 1.52. He did not have the best vert. He did not have a good broad. Malcolm, completely kicked his butt there. So the burst worries me a little bit. Even though I like Jay, I would love to see him become a Lion from a special teams ace perspective. I need to see a better pro day. I need to see some of these scores get better. But the tape is where the eye test is going to sell us on this kid. If he can play fast, if there are next gen stats on him that tell me otherwise, then he is someone that maybe fits the mold as the next special teams ace. But right now, he's a late round pick afterthought for me, but I do like his ability on the field, but he's not somebody that I would be taking in place of other players, if that makes sense.
And we got to remember Rodrigo's going to be out for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know when we're going to see him on the field again. It is going to be a bit.
So obviously we need multiple linebackers, multiple. Yeah. If we get, one in free agency and 2 in the draft, I wouldn't be surprised, or vice versa, 2 in the free agency and 1 in the draft. I still think you need an earlier round linebacker as opposed to later. I think later is just if you still have those, you know, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks and you need to grab somebody, grab somebody. That's just kind of the way I view it. I think that 5th, 6th, you know, 7th round picks are all but lost picks anyway. A lot of them never play, hardly play. A few of them work out, but let's be honest here. Very, very infrequently do you have a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick that actually turns into something. Very infrequently. So I don't want people to get, how do I put it? A sweet tooth over the fact that Brad has been able to bring in a couple of guys late in the draft process that have turned out to be pretty good ball players. It's extremely rare. Brad's just done a better job than most, I guess is the way I'll go with that. Let's get into some free agency talk real quick. So first thing I want to do is I want to go into my list that I've compiled. I think it's fairly accurate. Let's get into the article here, or not the article, get into my worksheet. Okay, Lions free agents. Now, the guys in red on the left are the guys that I'm not expecting to come back this season. I've erased their value just because, but I kind of tucked it in a different area. Allen Robinson, look, he's an 11-year vet. I don't expect him to be back this year, and if it is, it has to be on a vet minimum just for camp purposes only. Obviously, an unrestricted free agent. He can do whatever he wants. Tim Patrick, right now, I would love to see him come back. I really would. But his projected value is over $4.5 million.
Ooh.
4.5. That's not bad, you know, especially for his production, you know, and where I think he's going to grow this season. We paid we paid Josh Reynolds, like, was it 6 or 7 million?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get Tim Patrick at $4.5 million, I think that you're winning. Shane Zylstra. Right now, he's a restricted free agent, so the Lions do have a little bit of control, and his projected number is at 1.3. Now, most sites have him at like 990 to 1.1. I bumped him up a couple $100,000. I think that he's going to be in that 1.3, 1.5. Probably wants a multi-year deal, even though he hasn't done anything in his career, really. I'm not so sure that he's going to be back, but if he is, $1.3 million for a camp body, I'm all for it. Dan Skipper, unrestricted free agent. He's 30 years old, 7 years of experience. Now, his cap is going to, or his salary is going to raise. I think he's going to be closer to $2 million this year than the 1.5 or 1.4 that it's projected to be. He probably deserves it. I mean, Dan's been a pretty consistent guy. He actually made the roster last year, if I remember correctly, for the first time ever.
First time.
I would love to see him come back, but I also think that the Lions are looking to, you know, grow Manu and get him ready. And that is going to be Manu's, you know, position right off the get. Is probably more of that swing tackle, you know, more of that extra lineman, you know, in our bigger packages or goal line. I'm really surprised that last year we did not use Manu at all in any of our goal line opportunities. I mean, you put him in as a tush push candidate. Hell, put him behind center and give him the ball. Ain't nobody going to take him down. That's what I would do. He would be my secret weapon back there. I think you called him the fridge at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Neese, look, I'm gonna go ahead and highlight him in red. He might be back, but right now I'm out on Michael Neese. At an exclusive rights free agent at 1.9 million. I have a problem with that. Morris Norris, for some reason, I think he's coming back right now at 1.2. He's also an exclusive rights free agent. Connor Galvin, I put him in the same boat as Michael Neese. He's probably coming back. I really don't, I'm going to change Michael to, we're going to go orange. He's a little warm. I prefer not, but probably happening. Craig Reynolds, 1.2 million, restricted rights, free agent, probably coming back, entering his 6th year, I believe. 28 years old. I think that he's a very valuable asset to the Lions, but I think he's probably going to test free agency as well. I don't think that the Lions are going to have to really worry a whole lot. Matter of fact, I don't know what the RFA tenders are. and what the Lions are going to have to give him. I don't know if you have those up either. Do you, Eric?
No, I don't.
I thought you had the tag information out.
Oh, yeah. Just one second. So you want to know a transition?
Restricted free agent tag.
No, this just has the franchise tag and the transition tag.
Oh, yeah, I don't need that.
Because those are for tomorrow. So tomorrow is the deadline for franchise tags and transition tags.
Which I don't think the Lions are going to be using any of those.
Nope.
Okay, so for 2025, right now, the restricted free agent tenders, so an RFA tender, if you were to give him a right of first refusal, you're going to have to pay Craig $3.26 million.
Whew.
That's not happening. I can't imagine that that's happening. So I'm expecting Craig to fully test free agency. He's out. And whether or not he gets something, great. Teddy Bridgewater, the only reason why he's in red is because we know he's going back to coaching. And that's not a negative on him. Zeke Turner, unrestricted free agent. Please stay that way. I'm not really worried about him coming back. I'm not a big fan of the way that he played, but something tells me he probably will be back. But this is my early consensus that these are the players that I would probably walk away from, which means we have a lot of holes to fill. Ben Nyman, 7 years of experience. I thought that he played admirably last season. He was, thrown into a tough situation. He got a ton of playing time. I think that this is a guy that you want to bring back. Right now, his projected value is right around 1.1. I'm going to go ahead and bump him up into probably the 1.35 area or 1.5 area, excuse me. And we'll call it 1.4, I guess. I think that he's worth it, and I think that he'll be back. Derek Barnes, 4th season, unrestricted free agent. He's probably going to test free agency. This is another guy that you'd probably love to have back, but what's up with his injury status? I'm not sure right now. I haven't looked in a while. He'll probably be healthy by camp, I would assume. I don't think there's an issue there. But do the Lions want to get better? Can they keep Derek? Or is this going to turn into a multi-year deal where Derek is probably going to be valued at the $3 million a year range for 3 years? He'll probably get a 3 and 10. 3 over 10. Which, to me, I think that's a little bit much to pay Derek. But then again, I don't really have anything to go off of right now. But I'm going to make him orange, which I'm kind of half in, half out on. Michael Badgley, he's a kicker. I'm sure we're probably going to bring in another kicker, but I've seen where the Lions have also interviewed some kickers. Might even bring in another rookie. We're right now at $1.5 million. You've got to bring in another kicker no matter what. You have to have camp competition. You have to have someone to keep your guys healthy, your legs healthy. Anthony Pittman, I'm good on. He's entering his 3rd season. He is also restricted free agent. So that $3.26 million right of first refusal, I can't imagine that the Lions are going to pay that when his value is probably in that 1.1, 1.2 area. Trevor Nowaski, you have to keep him. Exclusive rights free agent. And from that perspective, if he's a $1.2, $1.3, $1.5 million a year guy, I think that it's worth it. A lot of these guys are going to get vet minimums. I think the vet minimum is about $9.90 or something like that. Quan Alexander, obviously, I don't think he'll be back. No explanation needed. All right, Kevin Zeitler. Guy's 35 years old this year? What did he get paid last year? Was it $10 million?
6.
Was it 6? It says 6 on my sheet.
I think it was 6.7. If my crappy old brain remembers things right.
Okay, so yeah, he had a cap hit of 5.94. We stole him.
Yes.
Well, his market value according to Spotrac is 9.2.
I'd probably pay it.
I think it's worth it if you could land in the middle. If you could get him at 7.5, great. Let's do it. Anything above 7.5, I'm out. And that's simply because we have Mahogany and we still have Graham Glasgow. This could mean you bring Kevin in and you get rid of Graham.
Yep.
If you bring Kevin back, I think that Graham is gone. I think that you're probably going to trade him.
That's why I would pay Zeitler 9.
I'd have to look at Graham Glasgow's cap consideration, and we're going to do more of this. We're going to do the exercise where we go through the roster and we kind of create our own, and maybe I'll get it done this week, but I'll explain to you guys why I believe we can't bring in these high price free agents. And it's simply just because of the contracts and where it makes sense and where it doesn't. So Graham Glasgow's contract right now in 2025, he is due a base salary of $5.5 million, but he only has a guarantee of $1 million. So this is where the Lions can get out of the contract. If they were to cut him pre-June, the Lions would save about $7.6 million, and they would also lose about $9 million. So it's almost a wash. It's almost a wash. If they were to trade him pre-June, they would save we'll call it 8.8. They would assume dead cap of 4, 5, 6, about 6.2. So a trade makes more sense. Now, obviously, next year is the major out in 2026. There is no guaranteed money left on his deal. He has a cap hit of 8.4 in 2026. His total cap hit this year is 7.4. So Kevin versus Graham, I think it's Kevin. I also feel that Graham did not play well on the left side, so I think that's an issue. If you are bringing back Kevin Zeitler this year, then what are you doing with Graham? Because he did not play well on the left side. The year before, he was awesome. He played all three positions, left and right guard, center, had great grades, great games at all three positions. Something was up this last season. What do you think about Graham versus Zeitler? I know you said bring in Zeitler, but if we do bring back Zeitler, what does that do for Graham?
Well, that makes him either trade bait or a post-June 1st cut. And I hate to say it, but there might have been something wrong with Graham last year. He did not look right all year. He had a defeated look on his face when you would see him pregame in warmups, and which was kind of different because the year before he always had this big smile, ready to go look on his face. And like walking into the locker room at halftime, you saw it, the head down, oh man, I'm not having my best kind of game kind of look. And I was really looking at that kind of stuff this year because he really did have a down year this year.
So what you're saying is the body language
wasn't
a lot to do with it.
Yeah. And, this is a business. Brad Holmes, this is kind of like Build-A-Bear for the roster. You gotta build your roster. You can't put sparkly googly eyes all over your Build-A-Bear. You could, but then it's not going to look very good, not going to perform well. So you have to make some hard decisions sometimes. Sometimes you got to put normal eyes on your Build-A-Bear. And this is one of those times where he's a fan favorite. He's a former Michigan player. He's played with us twice. He was drafted here. This is one of the ones that, might hurt some fans' feelings, but you have to take the feeling component completely out of it. You have to look at the production on the field and what their salary is worth.
So I'm putting some information here on the bottom of the sheet that you guys can't see yet. So I'm going to put a cut section in now. I'm adding it. So his previous was about 2.7 last year. This year he's looking at about 7.4. My note for this guy is post-June cut. So if you do a post-June 1 cut, the Lions will save $13 million, and they will have a dead cap of 2, 3, 4, about 5.4 million ish, which isn't bad. So you're saving, $8 million roughly by cutting him post-June 1. He's 33 years old, 9 years of experience. I think that Graham is out. Honestly,
if you're saving $8 million, slap another $1 million on there. There you got Zeitler for another year.
If that's what it's going to cost to keep him. All right, I'm going to put Zeitler as we'll go orange, so slightly warm. on Zeitler here. Slightly warm on Derek Barnes coming back. It's got to make sense. I think Connor Galvin, again, Michael Neese, they're probably going to come back just as depth in the very beginning. All right, let's get into Coyote Owasika. Again, a restricted free agent. Oh, I didn't put him in blue. Let's make him blue real quick. He's a restricted rights free agent. Again, if you're looking at, a number for that, it's $3.26 million. There ain't no way in heck you're slapping this on him and expecting that kind of money to be paid to him. I am not high on Coyote Owasika. I know he played, decent in the NFC Championship game in 23, but since then he's been largely ineffective, ill-utilized, kind of a camp body. Look, if he comes back for, vet minimum or something for this year, great. But right now I'm not in the boat with this dude just yet. Appreciate his service though, of course. Levi, so this is the big one for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Lions kind of evaded a tragic set of events. Levi suffers a major back injury. I believe it happened in college, and then it gets worse in his first season as a Detroit Lion. He undergoes back surgery, clearly has kicked butt, taken names, gotten himself back onto the field. I thought he had a great 2024. But man, are you willing to continue to roll the dice that you just got lucky on? And it took 4 seasons for this guy to finally make the field. That's my biggest question. Are you willing to pay this guy a 3-year, over $15 million deal right now? Or more? What do you think?
That's a lot of money. And on the other side of the coin, do you let him walk and go with Aaron Glenn to the Jets?
Well, I mean, he might. I mean, I have no idea if that's where he'll end up, but I think that people are going to want to be smart. I mean, you just evaded a huge issue. So his value right now, I've got him at $7.9 million. That's my value on Levi. So I'm sorry, I said 3 over 15, 2 over 15 is what I'm expecting Levi to get. So about $8 million a year. I'm sorry. I think Brad has to be smarter here. You evaded a major disaster. You only got 1 year's worth of work out of this guy on his rookie contract. I think, I love the grit glory days, right? I love the grit guys. I love the guys that identifies the culture and the team and the locker room. Look, I appreciate it all. But the business is the business, and I'm sorry. I think Levi's going to get the business end. I think he is. Because I'd rather see a guy like Kyle Picot come back. A guy that has had a pretty decent career. And I think that he played fairly well last season until he got injured. He was a big part of the reason why this defensive line was playing well, throughout the summer and preseason, early into the season. Kyle was playing great. When I watched him at training camp, man, I couldn't believe how good he was for somebody that I didn't really know, or might have been a little after training camp. His value is all over the place. Matter of fact, his value for OTC says $0, which obviously doesn't make sense. If I do a little bit of work here and kind of go and compare him to some other players, the value that I come up with is, he's entering what, 10th season, 9th season. I think he's probably going to command a 2-year deal at, $7 million. We'll go 3.5. I'd rather see this come back than Levi. Now, I know he's a little bit older, but we're talking a vet, someone that can, stick to this roster for this season, get yourself an out in 2026, and bring him back in. Any thoughts on Kyle Picot or Pecco?
He was great while he was in, and then got injured, and off he went. Do you remember what his injury was? I don't. Was it a pec?
Pec with a Pecco? I thought it was a knee.
Or was it a knee? Just depends on what the injury was.
No, it was a pec. It was a pec, a torn pec.
Thought he torn a pec.
And that was week 6 though, so he should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, he should be fine. Look, if you can get him for $3.5 million for one season or better, great. If you can get him for 2 at 7, wonderful. Because the next guy, Marcus Davenport, I know there's a lot of mixed feelings on him. Eric, I'll just ask you first. What do you think?
Right away, Marcus Davenport, bring him back for depth. When he was in for the limited time we got to see him for 2 games, 3 games, he was a great can crusher. You know, he had a half a sack, and he was getting there, and he was keeping contained better than Aiden Hutchinson was.
That's a fact.
The quarterbacks were not running around his end and getting away from him. And he was out there when Kyle Murray was playing.
Kyler Murray, yeah. Yep. He was having a good game. I mean, it was so much so that Paris Johnson was so pissed. He decided to do what he did to his arm. And look, I think that it's $6.5 million APY, what he got last year, is too much. It's definitely too much. So I'm not, I wouldn't be in the boat of paying him that kind of money.
No, it's going to have to be a 1-year absolute prove it deal. Maybe even vet minimum.
Nah, I probably wouldn't go vet minimum, but here's what I would say. Again, I'm going to put him kind of between where he was and where I feel that he should be. So last year he was 1 year, I think it was 6.5. Yeah, let me pull it up. He got paid a base of 1.2. He had a signing bonus of 2.3. He had a cap hit of 3.5. And if the Lions let him go, he had a dead cap of 4.6.
He had a lot of incentives on playing time built into his structure as well.
Yeah, so here's what I would do. Now, Spotrac and OTC are way different on valuations here. I don't know why they're so different. But, I mean, it's even as far as what the contract was. But here's what I would say. I would say you give him $3 million, 2.5 to 3 million guaranteed. We'll go 2.5 guaranteed. But then you're going to give him a bunch of incentives to earn up to 5 million. And you bring him back for that one season. You give him a fully guaranteed $2.5 million deal. You bring him back on a 1-year deal with $2.5 million extra in incentives. That means games played. You get an extra 50 grand or 100 grand, whatever it is, 150 grand per game played. Every sack you get 50 grand. Or maybe in 75, whatever the number is. Every tackle you get 10 grand. I don't know. I haven't seen a contract, with all the incentives built in. I would love to see one of these contracts. I wonder if a former NFL player is allowed to share those things. But last year at $6.5 million or whatever, whatever he was supposed to get paid, probably didn't happen. And I'm expecting this year that his market value is probably going to be in that 2.2 to 3.3 area. And that's why I'm saying give him 2.5 guaranteed, bring him in. I'm warm on Marcus coming back. I think that, like you do, incentive-laden makes sense, but I think that experience, depth, not a starter. I'd rather see Marcus come in and have to work for everything, stay healthy. We need a young buck on this roster. So Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, Landon Jackson, I think that wherever, you land one of those guys, they would probably work into being the day one starter. John Kaminsky, I know this one's a heart puller, man, a string puller. What do you think about John?
It's unfortunate that he was injured for all of last season, but that's part of why this needs to be a business decision. And I'm sorry, I think his time with the Detroit Lions has ended.
I'm with you. I think that he's one of those glue guys. I think he's exactly, what the Lions wanted, an interior defensive lineman. Now, let's make sure we identify the difference here. Kaminsky is an interior defensive lineman. 6'5", 286 pounds. He was just so happened to be able to play on the outside as well. He was a little bit more of a hybrid. And I think that, you'd love to see him perform. And the way he did the first year, man, you couldn't have asked for anything more out of the guy. But I think at $2.5 million to $3.5 million market value right now, and he just hasn't produced. I think the exercise is over. I think that you have to move forward. So I think that John Kaminsky is out. What about Al-Quddin Muhammad?
Now, this guy, if you can get him on a cheap deal, great rotational piece. But to ask him to be a starter again, no way.
I thought I saw some bright lights from him at times. I don't think the moment was ever too big for him. I think that he has a lot left in the tank. I mean, he is entering his 8th or his 9th season this year, pushing 30 years old. But if I were to take a guy over a guy, I would take Al-Quddin Muhammad over John Kaminsky. And as far as a market cap perspective, I've seen numbers between 2.5 million on Spotrac all the way down to 1.6 million on OTC. You know, I'll probably go right in the middle. We'll just call it 2.1. You know, if you give him a fully guaranteed vet minimum, let's just say 1 million, 1 million guaranteed, 2.1 million, is the ceiling, then yeah, I'm warm on bringing him back. Pat O'Connor, he's coming back. I don't think that there's any way that he can't come back. This guy was a huge surprise. Like Brad Holmes said, I mean, you just don't expect that you bring a guy like this in the summer and then he has the season that he has and having to fill in the way that he did, totally unexpected. He worked his butt off. I mean, he's clearly a vet for a reason. 8 years in the NFL is a long time. I think that Pat O'Connor comes back. I think he's also going to get a lot of action in free agency.
Yeah, with Brad going out of his way to mention him when he didn't need to, that tells me he's coming back.
So we just don't have a deal on him yet that I know of. His valuation, again, there's varying degrees all over the place of what he's worth. For instance, OTC has him at 1.125, which pretty much vet minimum, right, for his age in the NFL. Spotrac doesn't have a value built in, but looking at his history, I would say, look, 1.75 million, I think that is doable. Now, my numbers are a little bit inflated, on some of these guys. I'm adding like an extra 250 to 350K on each guy because the cap has gone up. And look, if the Lions need to spend an extra $2 to $3 million spread out over 5, 6, 7 guys just to make sure that there's a little bit of a sweetener in there, then I think it's well worth it. So, Pat, I want to see him come back. How about Jonah Williams?
Undecided. He'd be a up in the air guy. He did well for the limited amount of time that he got to play with us. We picked him up off the Rams practice squad.
Yeah,
played in 1 or 2 games.
Yeah, I know he got some snaps. I can't remember exactly how many.
Yeah, just I didn't get enough of a sample size to say yes or no really with him. So for me, I guess I'd have to say no.
So young guy, right? He's only entering his 4th or 5th season in the NFL. I did think that, in the limited amount of time that he did get in, I think that he showed some brilliance at times. I also thought that he showed that he wasn't with the team during the summer. So this is a guy that if you bring in for, training camp and he's got an entire year to work with you since OTAs, I think that he has a higher ceiling. And the fact that he's been in a good, on a good team already with the Rams and developing, I think that's exactly why Brad, went after him, because he has history with him. I think that Jonah's coming back. And I think that would be a very wise move. I'm not so sure that he's going to get a ton of action in free agency. The Rams are probably going to want him to come back. I think that they're definitely going to be in the boat of trying to bring him back. But I want to see Jonah back in, and that's why I would give him a little bit of a sweetener at $1.5 million a season, whether that's 1 season or 2 seasons or whatever they do. Miles Adams, same thing, but he's also a restricted rights free agent. And $3.26 million is way too much to pay if you have to tender him, right? And then when I say tender, that's only so somebody else can't deal with him. Let me be clear. If you put a restricted, right of first refusal tag on somebody, That means that you're willing to pay that player $3.26 million or whatever the number is, and that no other team can now enter into a contract. But if they do, they have to beat that number. And then if they beat that number, I think that you get some sort of compensation later. You know, the whole comp game that the Lions have not done a very good job. This is where the Lions could play the comp game quite well this year. And a lot of these ERFAs and RFAs are probably going to disappear. And I'm not sure the exact formula, but that would mean that the Lions could possibly get some more comp picks next year, which we desperately need. Jonah, I want to see back Miles Adams. What do you think?
Kind of feel the same as I do with Jonah Williams, lower end of the roster type guy. Doesn't swing me one way or the other real hard.
So for me on Miles, I did like his ability. I mean, he's kind of an in-betweener, right? He's 6'2", 285 pounds. 27 years old, so he's still young. Doesn't have a ton of snaps on his body. So he's relatively healthy. 3 years, entering his fourth year, I believe. Value on this guy is vet minimum. I think you've got to bring him back. Again, I know I'm inflating these numbers, but I'm doing it for a reason. 1.5 million. I think it makes a ton of sense to bring him back. If he gets a ton of action in free agency, obviously you're probably going to let him go. What about Mitchell Agood or Goody?
Homegrown Lions guy, they want him back.
I think so too.
They want to see if they can keep molding this kid into what they want. I think the trial of turning him in Houston into Sam linebackers wasn't the greatest experiment in the world. So let's just keep him as an edge defender and stop trying to make him do more than what he was.
Yeah, I think that's a great position to have with both those guys. I'll finish doing my color coding later, but all right, next up, Carlton Davis. Right now, I've seen valuations on Carlton Davis in that $13.8 million range. Now, last year, Carlton was paid, which just doesn't make any sense that this can't be right. Let's take a look here. Carlton Davis. So it says last year that he was paid a $1.25 million base, a $3.27 million signing. He had a cap hit of $4.5 million and a dead cap of $13.097 million because the Lions threw in 3 void years at $3.27 million each year, which attributed to $9.823 million that they kicked down the road. Which I think when you add all that together is that, $14.5 million salary.
Mm-hmm.
And this year he's projected to get anywhere between 12 and 15 million again. Carlton Davis, in my opinion, he's not coming back. And he's not coming back because I think it's going to be too rich for the Lions. And there's another team that is going to want him even more.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think before I spit out who I think where he's going?
I think there's going to be multiple teams trying to get this guy from us because a broken jaw is so fluky.
Yeah.
And I know didn't he miss 1 or 2 games for something else during the year, a knee or something, and then he came back. Yeah, he had a knee and then he came back. He was pretty durable this year until he broke the jaw.
Yeah, he was.
That is so fluky. All these broken bones. I don't know where all these broken bones come from. I'm gonna say this right now. Whoever the trainer is for the Detroit Lions, you guys better be putting out cartons of milk all summer long for these guys.
Yeah.
Let's get these bionic bones going. Just the flukiest of fluky injuries, a broken jaw. I can't tell you the last time a player for the Detroit Lions had a broken jaw. It's been a while. And other than that, his play on the field was fantastic. He was lights out. There was What didn't he get defensive player of the week one week for the NFC?
I think so.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Look, he had a great year. I really think that, when we compare players and we look at, where they started and what we think that they were supposed to be doing or how they were supposed to be performing, I think he overperformed what we had expected or what a lot of people were saying about him, that he was oft injured. He misses on average 23% of games every year, which is a number that I put together, which is highly accurate. And again, when I compare that to other players like Marcus Davenport or, other, players that, people say he's oft injured, can't have him back on the squad, doesn't make any sense. Well, I mean, Carlton missed 23% of the games again, but he did overperform to what I thought that he was going to do this season. He was having a great season. I think that he would love to come back to play on this team again. But I also think that he's about his money and he doesn't have forever left in the league. He's probably looking for, and could get a 3-year deal from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
If the Lions wanted to lock him up for the next 2 to 3 seasons, you're looking at probably 3 over 36 is my valuation on him. So you have a down escalator, you probably pay him about 10 million this year. It would probably balloon up to 18 million next year and low guaranteed money in year 2. So you could have an out, but he's not going to like that. So you're probably not going to get the out until year 3. So I think at a minimum, you'd probably be invested in, 2 seasons at probably 20 million on average APY. And that's what he would get at a minimum. That might just be too rich for the Lions. Look, the Lions cannot go into the season without another proven vet, but I think that Amik Robertson and the way that he played this last season showed us a little bit different side of him that some of us knew existed in him, but maybe even more so that gives us some hope that he could play on the outside if required to, if Ennis Rakestraw is not ready, or if the Lions don't find another capable vet, or if they don't bring in another rookie that can play up to that standard. So Carlton, though, is going to get a lot of action. And what's being said right now is that the Jacksonville Jaguars are in hot pursuit of Davis. And it makes sense. I mean, they definitely need the help. And Jacksonville's looking at not only gauging the market, but they're also looking at a multi-year deal from the rumors that have already been spread. And we're just a week away from finding out. Like next Monday, it's going to be like I'll be in this chair all day. There are some options, though. I mean, the Lions do have some options as far as who they could bring in, and we'll highlight some of those options next. Now, I don't think it's Darius Slay. No, it's not J.C. Horn. Deron Bland. I mean, that would be great. But then again, how much are you willing to pay? Greg Newsome from the Browns. I mean, just throwing out some names, maybe. But there's some opportunity that still lies in the NFL for another good possible shutdown corner in place of Carlton Davis. I have Carlton as red because I don't think that he's coming back, but I'm going to put him as orange. So I'm warm on the idea. I wouldn't be afraid of going. 2 over 25, 12.5 million. That's what I would do for Carlton. I would do 2 over 25 and somehow have an out. That still gives him another opportunity to get one more deal before his 10th season, which is kind of that deciding factor, right? If you win a Super Bowl with the guy, he'll still hold some value at age 30. Emmanuel Mosley, no way. I don't even want to discuss it.
Practice squad.
Nope. I don't even want him sniffing the bench. I don't even want him, cleaning jerseys.
I think that experiment has come and gone and ran its course.
Yep. All right, Khalil Dorsey.
Wouldn't mind him back. He was a special teams ace, kick returner / little bit of everything. Just depends on how that leg healed up. Is he, like Aiden? He actually looked like he was on a quicker pace than Aiden was.
Yeah. So quick shout out to J-Rod. He wanted to know how CD3 broke his jaw. It was helmet to helmet, not called on the field again, but it was like helmet to jaw, helmet to helmet. You know what I mean? Like the helmet was kind of like off. It's kind of like face mask jaw at the same time. That's how it got broke.
Yeah.
And he entered concussion protocol at the same time. Obviously was in a lot of pain, and then found out that the jaw was completely just obliterated. Now he was talking good, on that podcast the other day, so his jaw seems to be healed up. He's good to go.
Yeah, Mike P. He say, Eric, my friend, a trainer can't train not to break bones any more than train not to have 23 on injured reserve. Correct. And that's what I was making fun of. Sorry, my sarcasm didn't come through on that one. There has been so many people that said, oh, we need a new training staff. We need to look at our training staff. You can't help broken bones. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
That's why I said they need to put milk out at everything. They don't get water or Gatorade. They get milk when they come off the field.
Or at least take some calcium pills or something. So vitamin D. All right. So Khalil Dorsey, look, I think that there's a better opportunity for him coming back than not.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's been, just fine. And for what purpose, that he does serve on this team. He's good depth. He knows the system. Now, Kindle Vildor, I think that door is closed. I'm obviously out on Kindle.
As am I.
I thought that, it was a good run back for him, this last season where we were hoping not to really see him on the field. But if we did see him on the field, it would have been from a perspective of great depth and situational things where, maybe some guys are getting a rest or something, or, you had a 1 week injury and you had to fill in. But having to rely on Kindle Vildor for a longer period of time, throughout the season, I think is not panned out the greatest. I still believe in his ability, and I think that what he did in Detroit was just fine as far as what he was paid to do and the services he provided. I mean, the first season, you can't blame him. He was in the same situation. I mean, everybody was injured, and you've also got a defense that was just not that great that season, especially in the back end. And you can't blame what happened in 2023 just on Kindle. I mean, that stuff is just so freaky. It just doesn't happen. And then last year, same thing. I guess I'm wishy-washy on this, but he was put in a situation that was as bad as it gets. Nobody's healthy. Your team is missing more than half of its starters on defense. You're not expected to win ball games, and you're definitely not expected to play at an elite level when there's so many, kinks in the armor, so to speak, up and down, every positional group. So I think he did admirable for what he was expected to do, but I'm not paying the dude almost $3 million a year based on the valuations right now that are coming out. Last but not least, Iffy Melifonwu.
I would like to see Iffy come back. That's just my personal opinion. You drafted him, you groomed him, you made him into a semi-decent safety, and then he was oft injured. He breaks a fingernail and doesn't want to play. It works his way back onto the roster, goes out in pre-games, and has to go back on the injured reserve again. So he spent most of his season on the injured reserve. But when he was in and did play, he played pretty darn good. But if you could just go back one season, he played really well. And he's great against the run. And he picks off some balls once in a while. I mean, he did it against the Vikings and won a game for us. So I don't really want to get rid of the guy, but it all circles around what happens with Kirby Joseph.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest X factor right now, which obviously we're about a week away from finding out on whether or not, there's going to be some trade options for the Lions. And if Kirby is on that list. Now, again, let me put out the public service announcement and be very clear. I don't want Kirby to have to go anywhere, but I think that, when you look at the probability of paying him a max contract and then having to turn around the next season and extend Brian Branch, it just doesn't happen. There's not one team in the NFL right now that has two high-paid safeties on the same roster. You know, you might have one max deal, and then the next highest deal is, you know, $4 or $5 million per year in the safety room. And so even paying $23 million on a safety room, that's a bunch of money. You know, it's like, 1/10, 12th, 1/13 of the cap number, whatever it is, whatever that number breaks out to be. That's a lot of money, especially when you look at next season. Jared Goff's contract is $70 million. You've got Aiden Hutchinson to pay. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs to pay. You've got Sam Laporta. I can't imagine they're going to walk away from Sam. You've got Jack Campbell that's going to be due. So it's a numbers game, and it's a vicious business. His value is worth more now than ever. If you could take, let me finish this, and then I'll talk about him a little bit more. Efetu Melifonwu, I would say this. I don't like the $2.5 million valuation, but at the same time, I don't think that we're going to find a better deal on the market for someone that has some pretty decent skill. He's got to stay healthy. You can't have this ticky-tacky stuff keeping him off the field. If you can get him back at a cheaper deal, great. $2.5 million a year, is probably the most I'm going to want to pay. He's probably going to get some heavy action. So he's going to go from blue to orange. He's probably going to get some heavy action, and this all depends on what happens here in free agency. Okay, so that's the free agent talk of the day. The more on Kirby here. To me, it's simple. To a degree, it's never simple, really, but to a degree, it's how do you pay everybody? Number one, you can't. How do you go into 2025 with as good of a DB room as you did in 2024? Obviously, there's a lot of injuries that didn't help out the situation. But if Carlton's gone, and you bring in a lower priced free agent or another rookie, then great. You could probably pay Kirby. And you wouldn't have to worry about it. But what if this happened? Okay, what if you traded Kirby somewhere, wherever it is, and you get, say you get a second round pick, and maybe you get a fourth round pick, and maybe you send away a third round pick. I don't know what the numbers are right now. I'm just taking a guess. You get a second and a fourth, and you send away a late third. You get an early second and a fourth, and you send away a late third. And then you take that second round pick, and you've got number 60 already, and you've got 28, and now you're able to get, your Shamar Stewart, your Landon Jackson. What if you snag Nick Emenawari?
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying? And so now you've got a really, unproven, but a really good safety coming out of college that has elite size, elite agility, played extremely well last season, but you already have Brian. So you know that the safety room is solid. And you stack a rookie like that back there, he could be, one of the best players out of the draft, especially in this defense, which is going to return a lot of healthy players. So it's not so much that I want to get rid of Kirby at all. He's exactly what we want. But if you have an opportunity to take a pick like that and go out and get one of the most elite safeties that obviously I haven't seen anybody with that kind of size and that ability ever. It's been a long time. I don't even know who you would compare him to.
Yeah.
Have you gave that any thought? Who do you compare him to? Cam Chancellor?
Well, they couldn't find another comp. You want to know who they had to comp him to? DJ Metcalf. Not even the same position, from measurables and body type. So, yeah, it's like having a DK Metcalf at safety.
I would have compared him to Cam Chancellor. So I don't know if they were comparing him so much to DK as they were trying to match him up on DK.
Yeah.
But Cam Chancellor was 6'3", 225 pounds. Matter of fact, let's look at Cam Chancellor's combine. But I know what you're talking about. I remember DK being on on the screen there when they're talking about him. Where's Cam's combine stats? Combine results. Where is it? Why is it not showing up? Okay, we'll just roll with this. And let me get Nick Emanawari's combine stats. Nick is special, dude. Like he is so special.
Mm-hmm.
Super exciting player. So Nick, 6'3" and an 1/8, 220 pounds, ran the 40 in 4.38. Broad jump 11.6. 43-inch vert.
Mm-hmm.
Let me double check that on the combine results though. 6'3", 220, 9-inch hand, 32.5-inch arms. I mean, all elite. 40, 4.38, 10-yard split, 1.49. 43 vert, 11.6 broad, 20 reps on the bench. I mean, the dude, he gets it.
You can get there quick.
Yeah, Cam Chancellor. Don't know why I'm not seeing it. But he had a 32-inch vert. So Nick's got it by 11 inches. He had a broad of 116, which Nick has him by... I can't do the math in my head right now. Has him by 22 inches.
Oh, Jesus.
Cam had 22 reps on the bench, so they're almost even there. 20-yard shuttle was a 4.41. You know, Cam was a fifth-round player, fifth-round selection in 2010. Played for the Seahawks for 8 seasons. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time second-team All-Pro. Retired at age 30. He had a neck injury in 2017 that obviously had a threat of paralysis, and that he ended his career. Which sucks, man. But when you look at what Cam was able to do, he was one of the most freakishly athletic and gifted athletes. I mean, obviously overlooked, because back then, when you're looking at a safety of that size, people are like, this dude can't play safety. He's too big. He's way too big. He should be a receiver. And I mean, shoot, Nick could probably be a receiver. I don't know if he's ever played receiver, but Cam ran the 40. Get this, 4.62 seconds. So Nick has him by, 0.24 seconds. So almost a whole quarter second faster. Nick is a special, gifted athlete. And that's why if you trade Kirby, you better get Nick. Like, it doesn't make any other sense than that, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's 10:15. We got 2 hours in. What else did you want to talk about today?
I think I'm good. I have a very extremely busy day today.
All right, so we'll get back at it tomorrow. Tonight is mock draft Monday 3.0. Be starting probably around 7-ish or whatever time it's scheduled for. If it's already not scheduled, it'll be scheduled shortly. So I'll see you guys back here tonight. Yeah, you guys let me know in the chat, obviously the comments later. Where do you want to see the Lions in 2025 as far as getting risky? I think that's going to be a good conversation for tomorrow. Will the Lions be risky? And how risky will they be? Kirby, letting him, go to a different team could be risky. Then again, will he ever be able to repeat what he did this last season? Highly unlikely. So we'll talk about that all and more tomorrow. We'll be highlighting combine, free agency, and draft perspectives for the next couple of weeks, but free agency is really going to pick up this week. So we'll see you guys tomorrow morning on the Rise and Grind Morning Show at 8 a.m. We'll be back tonight for Mock Draft Monday. Take care.
Detroitlions.